Okay friends, to get started on our filler neck, we're going to come underneath the driver's side of the truck, right where the filler neck is. The first thing we're going to talk about is removing this ground wire right here. We don't want to remove it from this, we're going to remove it from where it mounts onto the frame of the truck. If you were to look up in the mirror, you can see where the bolt is, right up along the top of the frame. Let's remove that. There's our bolt with our ground wire. Let's keep that bolt. Now that the ground wire is off, we're going to continue on by removing our clamps that hold the hoses to the filler neck itself. I like to spray everything down with a good amount of penetrant. Now we're going to continue with a 1/4 inch ratchet and an 8mm socket and start loosening this clamp. The first hose I'm going to take off is this one right here. That way there it's out of the way so I can remove the next clamp. Okay, that's nice and loose. Let's go ahead and slide it out of the way. Now let's continue with this right here. We're going to get in between the filler neck and the hose itself and just try to separate the two. I want to be very careful not to damage the hose that leads down to the fuel tank. Okay, so now that we went ahead and broke this one free, let's continue on to removing the larger one now. Just going to do the same thing, loosen up the clamp, and then of course we'll get around it with that pick and break it free. Now let's go ahead and open up our fuel door. Remove the fuel cover. And then let's remove our 3 mounting screws for the filler neck. Now that we have those 3 mounting bolts out, let's continue on to removing this bolt and this one right here. Okay, so now that they're both out, we can move this around. Let's get back underneath the truck. So now we're just going to go ahead and grab onto this fuel neck tube. You can tell that we can move it around. Now I'm just going to come with a little pry bar in between the filler neck and the black piece itself. Try to gently pry and then separate the two. Let's go ahead and get this piece out of here. So now we have plenty of movement here. You can tell that our hoses are starting to separate from the actual filler neck. I'm just going to use my pry bar, come right up in between the frame area here. Be careful for any brake lines you might have. And let's just try to separate the filler neck from those hoses. There we are. Let's go ahead and remove that. There it is, friends. Okay, so now that that's out of here, let's continue on by inspecting and trying to clean out as much of this debris inside of our hoses as possible. If it looks as though the hoses are cracked in any way, now's a perfect time to go ahead and replace them. Okay friends, now it's going to be time to put on our new fuel neck. First thing I like to do is just take this right here. We're going to line it up, start in all 3 of our bolts and leave them loose. Okay, so now that I've got all 3 of those bolts started, let's go ahead and start putting this up and in here. Okay, now let's go ahead and start putting on our hoses. So now what we want to pay attention to is where our hose is supposed to line up with. You can tell on this tube exactly where the line's supposed to be. So I'm just going to go ahead and work at it until it lines up. There we are. At this point, what we're going to do is feel along the top of the frame so we can find where that ground strap hole is supposed to be. After that, take a nice piece of sandpaper and sand down the area so you have a nice smooth surface. Alright, so now let's go ahead and put our ground strap on. Start it right into the frame and then snug it up. Alright, so now that we have those slid on, let's continue on by tightening up both of our clamps. Now we're going to move along to snugging up the ones that hold the neck to the plastic piece. Okay. This one I had to replace. Perfect. Alright, now just go ahead and make sure you put back on your fuel cap.